Welcome to Game Changer Live. We were created to inspire with topics that embrace coaching, things like positivity, mindset, and overcoming perfection. And we go live every Wednesday because we believe this is the most true and authentic, unedited version of ourselves, so that who you see on this channel is who you would actually meet in real life. Our motto for this channel is Together We Inspire, and I want to inspire you today with my guest, Kirsten Meneghello. Kirsten, I am so excited to have you with us. Kirsten is a PCC certified coach, and she has served our local International Coaching Federation chapter as our most immediate past president for several years, during which we had major structure changes dealing with COVID and changing from being kind of really focused on in-person to all of this virtual stuff that we have to embrace these days. And there is so much stress that I imagine Kirsten embraced as a leader, but you wouldn't know it by working with her. And she is compassionate, and I am so thrilled to have her here. Thank you so much for joining us, Kirsten. Welcome to the channel.
Thank you, Daniel. I'm excited to have a conversation with you today too.
Yeah, this is going to be awesome. So, you heard me introduce you, but I think it would be really nice if you could tell us a little bit about you and what your focus is for coaching.
Sure. Well, I focus on mostly coaching corporate leaders and helping them to navigate having difficult conversations with confidence. As a leader, you often have difficult conversations, whether they're accountability conversations, dealing with conflict on your team, delegating, feedback. I mean, the list goes on and on and on. And so there's just a challenge around every corner. And it's something I feel very comfortable with and confident in my own skills. And I enjoy helping leaders to up-level their skills in this area. So I founded my coaching practice, Illumination Coaching, in 2010, and have been working with leaders on effective communication skills since then.
Fabulous. So, if you could describe the person that's listening to us today that is going to most benefit from what you're presenting to us, what would that look like? Who would that be?
Okay. So generally, it's people at the director level and above in a corporate setting. So a lot of professional services folks as well. But I don't work as much with them like in brand new managers. I have friends and colleagues and associates that are really good at that kind of skill set. But people, I would say, in middle to upper management too, that again are trying to influence, they're trying to negotiate, get that buy-in across the organization, working across functional teams. There's a lot of work to be done there.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I know that you have a story prepared for us about some recent client successes or a specific recent client success, and I'm wondering if you would be happy to share that with us now.
Oh, sure. Well, I wanted to share the story of a vice president that I worked with recently who wanted to become more confident in his decision making. So sometimes he would get frozen with fear when he was trying to make a decision about things because he was so focused on avoiding making the wrong decision. He would kind of catastrophize it in his head. And so what he would do is he would go to his supervisor and like double check and quadruple check and confirm that his decision was a right one before he had to make a recommendation to the executive team. And I think this annoyed his manager quite a bit because he was like, you can trust yourself to do this, but he really didn't. And so what we did is through a series of coaching conversations, I realized what was happening was the decisions that he struggled with the most were things around which there was a rub with his values, his own personal values. So we did a core values exercise where he identified his top 4 or 5, and then he kept them posted next to his computer. And our next few sessions, he would kind of talk through these decisions that he was having to make and how he was using his values as a way to help him navigate these things. And it became so much easier for him because it was like, I'm seeing now why I was just kind of circling around and not really making any progress and taking action. And so that, it sounds like a pretty simple exercise, and yet it was very powerful. And I think that's a great example of one of the things that I'm bringing to the call today, which I know you're going to be sharing on your screen in a minute. But this idea of one of the activities on this bingo card I've created is this idea of reflecting on your values. And so if you don't know what your values are, you can't see sometimes how they show up in an empowering, a fulfilling way in your life, or how they may be holding you back, not holding you back, but there might be a conflict with something going on in your life. And that's really the cause of the stress. And I know we're talking about self-care and stress today.
Yeah, we are talking about self-care and stress today, and I will be sharing that bingo card here in a second. But I think
Okay.
that I want to explore that topic a little bit. So, what happens to leaders when they don't practice self-care? What are some of the risks or some of the symptoms, if you will, of a leader who needs to practice some more self-care or who could really benefit from that practice?
Sure. Well, I think there can be a number of derailing behaviors. So basically, when we're unable to kind of watch out for our own behaviors, like we go through life and we don't just act out and show, like say whatever comes in our minds. We're actually, what's the right word? Where you, maybe you can help me here, Daniel, where you're not guarded, but you're checking in with yourself before, like I would act
You're
in a certain
second
way.
guessing.
Yeah, and
Yeah,
you're evaluating your actions and your words before you just kind of come out there with it. And how you show up at home in the relaxation, hanging out on your sofa is going to be different than how you show up in the boardroom or a team meeting or something like that, right? And so what happens when we're really stressed, there's no filter. And so that can come out in terms of like rage and anger. It can just be where we can just shut down and withdraw and go within ourselves, right? So we're not, and this word will come to me at some point during conversation, Danny, where
okay.
we're not checking in with ourselves. And so it's just like the worst, the unfiltered part of ourselves come out. And it generally that's not a good way to react. We're reacting instead of responding,
Right.
right?
I was just going to say, it sounds like we're in a very reactive mode in that case, that we're not
Very
we're
reactive.
not thinking proactively, rather, or acting in a nature that we would normally act in that's coincides with our values. Instead, we're just reacting to whatever situation is in front of us, and heavens knows what that's going to look like.
It's usually not pretty. Let's
It's
put it that
usually
way.
not pretty. Well, so, and I guess why, so that gives us a reason of why it's important. Are there other reasons of why self-care is so important for leaders?
Well, I think leaders have two levels of responsibility. So, like in an organization, they've got their own stuff personally, right? They've got their own mental health challenges, potentially challenges at home. Maybe they're a caregiver for elderly parents or young children. Their spouse has got a medical issue. I mean, all kinds of things that they have them for themselves. And then as a leader, maybe you've got 6 or 8 people on your team that you're leading. They should, as a leader, be checking in with people on their one-on-ones about their own mental health for their direct reports, checking in like, are you getting the feeding and watering you're needing? Are you getting the support from me, the resources you need to do your job? Are you feeling that healthy level of challenge and not overwhelm? So as a leader, they've got their own personal stuff, and then they've got the second layer of trying to meet the emotional needs, or at least attending to the emotional needs of their team members as well. So this can also apply to caregivers or working parents, they are caring for themselves and others around them too. So it's all the more reason why self-care needs to be prioritized.
I'm going to share the bingo card now, and I love this card. So our audience is going to be able to see it here. I love this card because it gives so many actionable steps that people can practice. Can you tell us a little bit about this card before we go into it a little?
Yeah. Well, I this idea just kind of came to my mind one morning a couple weeks ago, and I thought it'd be fun to gamify this idea of self-care. And while certainly a person's not limited to these 25 spaces on the bingo card, it was like, oh, what are some different ways to think about it? And so you'll see that there are 5 columns. So you might be sharing at this point, but there are some physical ways to deal with self-care, some ways to just deal with stress management, to engage in more mindfulness, a spiritual take on self care, and also some through social interaction, how you can do that as well. And the way that I like to think about it is we can use it in 2 different ways. You could use a tool like this as a diagnostic tool. So, for example, on the physical column of those activities, I've got 5 things listed here. So, get outside in nature, get sweaty, take a break from screens, get a massage, and prioritize sleep. So, as a diagnostic tool, you might look at that list and go, you know what? I go out for a run every morning in the fresh air and I'm not on my screen. I'm not listening to a podcast. I'm just present being in the world. Well, you've already like hit 3 of my 5 suggestions there. So maybe you're doing pretty good with the physical aspects of self-care, but maybe as you look at this, you go, I haven't done anything in the social column in a while.
Yeah.
I've been just kind of keeping to myself and haven't been reaching out to friends or mentors or support groups. And so maybe there's an opportunity to dig into that column a little bit more. So we could use it that way. Another way to use it is a resource tool. So sometimes we're so stressed out and burned out that we're just like, oh, like where do I even begin? And so I encourage you to start with a free space in the middle, which is literally breathe. So I know that when I get stressed out, I kind of go up into my shoulders and my collarbone, and I'm not breathing from my belly. I'm breathing up here. And if I'm breathing. And so to just start in that place of just like immediate quick hit, lay down under your desk, close your eyes and sit at your chair for a few minutes, take a few deep breaths or box breathing like we did earlier, Daniel.
Yeah.
And then from there, like maybe then you're like, tomorrow I'm going to pick one thing on this card and just little small bites. So it doesn't feel like overwhelming. I have to go and do all these things now
Yeah.
because when you're that stressed out, you can't even imagine. Like, I have one more thing to do. Oh my goodness. I don't want to do that. You know, that'd
Yeah,
be
and
my
then we get to a place where we just stop doing it because it's too much work or it's stressful in and of itself, right? And
right.
kind of defeats the whole purpose. So I like that. I love incremental steps. As a perfection coach, I practice iteration design with my clients, so it's always about incremental steps. It's one thing each day instead of all of the things all at once. And I love that.
Exactly. Well, it's like building a habit, right? And
Yeah.
I forget if it's Atomic Habits or the other habit book where a gentleman was trying to start going to the gym more often.
Mm.
And the first step he took was he drove to the gym and then he drove home. He never even stepped foot outside. And the next day he went to the gym and he checked in and he went on the treadmill for 5 minutes and then he left. And then the next day he wanted to stay for like 7 minutes. And so he just, instead of like, I'm going to go and do this workout, it's just what are the little steps that I can do to build to something that's more meaningful?
Yeah. I happen to love that story specifically because of neuroscience. Like there's neuroscience to back that. If we are
Yes,
successful at the little steps, where it's like trailblazing a road through a forest. It takes a lot of work to make that path appear, but if you go over the same area long enough and you're successful in doing it, it makes a little trail that you can follow and it's a lot easier to walk along.
exactly. So true. Yes. So same is true for self-care. Yeah.
Great, great. I love that. So we talked a little bit beforehand about some self-care, but and you know that I practice my coaching profession around perfectionism, overcoming perfectionism. Um, and I can imagine that self-care really also kind of ties in with perfectionism a little bit as well. We're kind of making that connection here already. Can you tell us a little bit more to that about that or speak to that a little?
Yeah, well, I don't have all the answers. I know you have some suggestions too, we're going to dig into, but I think as perfectionists, they seek to do everything right. And there are these unrealistic high standards that they put on themselves, which can lead to additional stress and anxiety. So, self care practices can be part of the antidote for this. And so, we've all heard the expression put your oxygen mask on yourself first while you're flying on a plane. I know that tends to be overused, but I think that idea really works, that metaphor, because if you're chasing perfection and trying to do everything right, it's like it's endless, right? So we as leaders need to put on our oxygen mask first so that we can help the team members sitting next to us on the plane. And there's an opportunity for perfectionists to grow through the process of self care. While it might be tempting for them to perfect this concept of self care and do it perfectly, we don't want them to do that. Instead, you can use something like the bingo card or other favorite forms of self care as a pick list and just pick one thing and just focus on enjoying doing it. So, for example, you've got a dog, you want to go throw the ball with the dog for like 10 minutes at the park. And instead of it being like a camera ready moment, I'm going to Instagram and I'm going to TikTok about it, whatever, it's just focus on just doing and being present and engaging in all your five senses. And over time, as you focus on the pleasure and the enjoyment of doing something, I think it becomes easier to just do it, as they say, instead of trying to perfect it. But I'd love to hear your thoughts and how you help people with this too.
I really resonate with what you said, and I want to go back to something that you said at the beginning of the show that a lot of leaders are your in your story about your client, he was really concerned about this catastrophizing or this worrying about something that's happening in the future, right? And to me,
Yes.
that is perfectionism, because perfectionism is all about trying to avoid some form of catastrophic event or some sort of thing that's in your mind that hasn't even happened yet, right? We're worried about how people see us. We're worried about how we're going to be judged. We're worried about how we're going to feel about ourselves when we're done, right? So we put all of this effort into avoiding that catastrophe rather than trying for the success. And the other
Mm,
thing that I do with my clients that, and we talked about this before. I think that I'm excited to share this is that when I work on self-care with my clients, I usually focus on love languages because self-care is all about showing yourself that you matter to some degree, right?
cool.
And
Yes.
and and to giving yourself some sort of relaxation. And there's no way for that to be more meaningful if it actually coincides with your own personal preferred love languages. If you
Mhm.
like having a nice conversation, then have some affirmations in the mirror as a form of self-care,
Yeah.
right? Or write a journal to yourself. Have that conversation, that deep conversation that's going to be more meaningful because that's your love language, and to explore the other love languages, right? That it's not just about getting into a rut of always just looking in the mirror and saying, I'm gosh darn great. It's
Like
sometimes you
this
need to
Smalley
take
from
that long
SN.
bath, right?
What was his name? Stuart Smalley?
Yeah, yeah,
So,
yes.
something like
Um,
that.
gosh darn it, people love me. Um,
Yes.
well, and in that, gosh darn it, I love me, right? That's so important. So
Yes.
that's kind of how I see self-care kind of falling in line with perfection. And so I'm so thankful that you thought of kind of bringing up this topic around perfection because I don't know, it's very touching. Thank you.
course. Well, that's a different way of thinking about the bingo card. So, we'll send this out to people that want to see it after the call today, but maybe you have it as your 5 love languages. So for people that are unfamiliar with that, can you list what the 5 are?
No.
Putting you on the
Um,
spot now. Wait a minute. Okay. So
yeah.
there's touch
So
or
whose show is
physical.
this? I'm the one who asked the question. I think it's time, right? Time is spending quality time with someone. So that would be look like meditation or a bath or whatever gets you in that mindset of really focusing in on yourself. There's words of affirmation, right? So
Yep.
that would be affirmations in the mirror. That could be affirmations in your diary, or gratitudes even can kind of fit in that. Um, there's
There's touch.
touch, right?
Yep.
So having a massage, I think it's in your list there under physical is get a massage. In fact, I'm going to switch off the bingo card because
Okay.
it's distracting me.
Okay.
So, but getting a massage is another one that's kind of related to touch, or enjoying physical companionship with your partner can also be a form of self-care, of spending time with people that you love. I don't remember all of the 5 love languages, and
I think
I
one's gifts.
yes,
So
yes,
actually getting a tangible gift.
yeah,
Um, and then you mentioned time experience. And I think the other one's like when people do service for you. So like when my
service,
husband empties
yes,
the dishwasher, I'm like, yes, thank you. And I really do appreciate that much more than if he were to purchase a gift for me.
yeah, yes.
Truly. So it's very individual. So folks at home, feel free to think about the self-care from those 5 love languages too. I think that's really brilliant.
Thank you, thank you. Well, and I think that your bingo card is absolutely brilliant. So if you were to give advice to a leader that's out there that wants to start that health, that self-care habit, you've already talked about kind of picking one thing, but what is your advice for a leader that's out there that wants to start that self-care habit?
Yeah, I think it's important to select some self-care activities and go ahead and bake that into your daily, weekly routine. Because if you are so stressed, you really are teetering on or in full on burnout, it's like putting a band-aid on a gushing wound. Like it's not going to just even scratch the surface of the care that you need. So, if we have these activities woven into our everyday lives, it helps us to be more resilient as a whole, and our stress and our adrenal system and everything doesn't get that out of whack. So, something my husband and I have done this year is we start our mornings instead of doom scrolling on our phone, looking at the horrible news of the world when I wake up. We roll out our yoga mats and we just pick a YouTube yoga practice teacher that we like. There are a number that we're fond of. Just do 20 minutes where we're doing some gentle stretching, some breathing, connecting with our bodies. And it sets such a different tone for our day. We both noticed it like big time. So that's one thing we've incorporated. And then things like massage. I do enjoy a massage. So before I leave the massage therapist's office, I just book my next one. So it's just like an autopilot. I don't have to think about it. I used to wait till I was like, again, my shoulders were just like in so much pain to go. And now with that regular proactive habit, it makes life easier. One leader who I work with recently adopted 5-minute meditation at the lunch hour. So, maybe they're only taking a break for 20 minutes, but 5 minutes is going to just be put on the meditation app with the headphones and just take 5 minutes. And they notice when they stop doing it, when there were like a number of crises at work and they set that aside, they're like, I'm really missing that habit. So I was like, okay, well, what do you pledge to do this next coming week? How will you reincorporate that? And so bake it in, find the things that work for you. They may or may not be on this card. You know what you need. And if you don't know what you need, experiment with different things. Do you find out what really works for you? Because what works for you, Daniel, may be different than me, right? We might
Yeah.
have some things in common, but
Well,
yeah.
I know
So
for a fact that you enjoy martial arts.
I do. I do karate and it's fun to scream and punch people. No, it is. I mean, we don't hurt each other.
Sure.
But that is a huge stress relief, truly.
Yeah.
Yeah, and just get sweaty. That idea of getting sweaty. If you get sweaty in the pool or go for a run or walk your dog, whatever. So
Yeah.
yeah.
and focus on something that's not the other thing that you would normally be focusing on, right? Focusing on your balance or your core. I know that those are martial arts things, right?
They are too. Yes. Yeah.
Well, if people could only walk away today with one thing that if they just walked away with one thing from your talk, what would that look like?
I would just say prioritize self-care. I know it's easy to put on the back burner because there's always something more pressing, but there will always be something more pressing. And if we don't prioritize ourselves, you know, what's going to happen? We're going to be just like a little sad ball in the corner, just exhausted and worn out. And I don't want that for anyone.
Yeah. And if people wanted to hire you as their
Sure.
coach because they want to work on their self-care, they want to work on their leadership, what
Yeah.
is the best way for them to get in touch with you or learn more about you?
Thanks for asking. Well, you could visit illuminationcoaching.com. That's my website. There's a contact form on there and some information about the services I offer. You can also email me directly, Kirsten, Kirsten, should be in my Zoom signature there as well, at illuminationcoaching.com. And if you want, I'm happy to send you a PDF of the bingo card for free, no strings attached. I'm not going to follow up and bug you. But if you want a copy of that, I'm happy to send you a PDF of it, and yeah, you can play with it around with it as well. I just built it in Canva, so it's pretty easy to do. But yeah, so you could personalize your own as well.
Awesome. I love that. And I encourage you to put those links in the comment section for this.
Okay, we'll do.
After we're offline, it becomes a video. And so you can see the YouTube comments in there. Thank you
Okay.
so much for being here today and talking about overcoming stress as a leader and giving us some real meaty, actual suggestions of things that we can actually do to help relieve some of that stress. And such a great tool, that bingo card. Thank you so much for presenting that. And thank you to the guests of the show who have been watching us today. Thank you so much for tuning in. It means a lot to us. If you enjoyed this content, I encourage you to give a like to the video. Give a like to the video if you enjoyed us as well. That would be wonderful. It also sends a message to Google that this is valuable content that other people might enjoy. Feel free to share this video with whoever you think could use a little bit of stress relief in their life, and consider subscribing to the channel, which enables you to live chat with us as well as get notifications for future videos. We are live every Wednesday, and we'll be back next Wednesday with more coaching topics of some form or other. And I'll see you then. Thank you.
Thanks, Daniel. Take care.
Thanks, Kirsten.